Yes, your Zoom is working. I'm just stalling a little bit here because we just opened the doors and everyone's taking their seat online here. So just give us a second while everybody loads in so we don't miss anything. We're expecting quite a few people today, and it's taking a little bit of time to get everybody in. So it is working. Don't need to adjust your mic or your camera. We are live. So, okay, here we go. Welcome everyone. It is Wednesday. I know that this is a little bit different. You're used to seeing us on Friday doing these. This is our ninth one, something like that. Just so that you all know, because it's the first question that comes up, we are recording this, so you will be able to refer to it later or send it to friends. We have created a YouTube channel specifically for our association. It's at nsdcartv.com. If you go there, you'll be able to check out all the previous chit chats as well as a lot of the training stuff. Most everything that we're doing now is online and it's available on that site. So it's nsdcartv.com. Another reminder is today voting starts. You should be getting your email today. Make sure you vote for the board of directors coming up. And I think that's about it. Let's get going. So we are really, really fortunate today to have Steve Murray. He is the president of Real Trends, been in the business 44 years, 34 years as a consultant with Real Trends, and has over 54,000 readers and has over 3,400 consulting assignments in that time. He's handled hundreds of large and small broker sales, thousands of company valuations, and I'm sure you've all heard of or seen the Real Trends 500 report, which ranks the top 500 companies each year. And I understand he's working on the top 1,400 agents right now for Wall Street Journal. That's a huge project, and he'll tell you a little bit about it. It's kind of fascinating. But Real Trends is also an NSDCR member benefit. You guys get the report emailed out to you once a month. So we're really fortunate again to have Steve here. So Steve, it's all yours.
Chris, thank you for that nice introduction, and good morning. And I guess it's good morning in California. It is here in Denver, where I am located. So I want to share some information with you, and three sections. One, some information about housing consumers and their use of and views of real estate agents and the services you provide for those who are agents. The second section, I want to talk about two of the most successful tactics that top agents, teams, and brokers have used in the 4 past recessions that I've had a front row seat for in my 44 years. I want to share those two with you. And third, maybe talk a little bit about what we see in the next 6, 12, 18 months. As they said, it's being recorded. Feel free to use that any way you see fit. So let's talk about first housing consumers. Now, Real Trends, starting about 20 years ago, hired a preeminent research firm called Harris Insights to do our own research about recent buyers and sellers of housing. First time we did it was 2001. We did one about 2 years ago in 2018. So here's what I want to share with you. In 2018, 90% of all housing consumers said they used an agent when they bought or sold a home. 90%. To put that in context, it was 81% in 2001, the first time we ran the study. Went from 81% to 90%. So the first myth that with all the technology and data and highly educated young families, they're not going to use agents like they used to. We've all heard that story for the last 20 years. Turns out to be bunk. Turns out to be there's more technology, more complexity in the housing sale and purchase, and more options. They actually think agents are more valuable today than ever before. And there's a second myth about that was, millennials and Gen X won't use agents because they're highly educated and they can use smartphones and they have the internet. Except in our study in 18, 92% of millennials and Gen X used an agent, more than the overall national average. Also, one other piece of information, the higher the income group and the higher the level of education, the higher the use of agents. So all those myths about agents wouldn't be relevant anymore or useful turns out to be really bunk. Okay, another myth. Customers are going to use the internet to find their agents. They're going to go online, they're going to go to rating sites, they're going to go here, they're going to go there. Well, our study showed that roughly 2/3 of all consumers chose their agent because they knew one or someone they know referred them, which is exactly the number roughly it was 30 plus years ago when the National Association of Realtors first began asking those questions. So let's see, that's a bunch of myths we just knocked out. What did consumers say they found valuable about agent services? Every year we've done this since '01, and we do it about every 4 years. So there's been, I think, 4 or 5 separate studies over that period of time. The most valuable service that agents provide in every single study was negotiating the purchase and sale of a home for sale, negotiating the terms and the prices and negotiating the deal. Last I checked, they haven't invented a computer that can do that yet because it requires market experience, market knowledge, intuition, empathy, understanding what your client's really feeling or thinking. Machines can't do that. The third biggest was navigating the process of buying or selling a home. And again, I would offer to you listening in on this, haven't found a machine that can do that yet. Now, one other key question we ask, and it was a separate question, is what is most important to you about your relationship with an agent? They had like 10, 12, 15 things to choose from. Every single year we've done this study, every single time we've done it, having a trusting relationship with an agent was by far and away the most important. It wasn't years of experience. It wasn't how many deals we've done. Although those are factors behind that, it was, I want to be able to trust my agent. So as you are practicing your profession, your trade, if you will, you know yourself, all the people you buy stuff from, all the people you interact with, the ones that you end up trusting versus the ones you don't, you can clearly come to some conclusions about the things that cause you to trust someone or not trust someone. It's transparency, it's communication, it's follow-up, it's accuracy, it's being on time, it's listening well. We all know some of these basic components of building a trusting relationship with somebody. Trust was, every single time we've done this for almost 20 years, trust was the number one thing a consumer values about working with an agent. Please keep all those pieces of data in mind while you build your business, because to my friends that are listening, the more technology we've added, the more systems, the more apps, the more data, the higher the frequency customers are using you to help buy and sell their home. And as I said earlier, that's even true among young people who we have been all told would not need us. So it's a very bright future, and the only one that can lose that business is we as professionals in this industry, that we don't conduct ourselves professionally and build trusting relationships. And you may note that almost everything we talked about that's important to consumers has to do with relationships. Okay, so that's a little bit of background data about housing consumers and their view of agents. Let's now go to section 2, which is, what have I observed up close, front row seat for the last 40 years for brokerage companies and agents and teams? I mean, we've now been ranking brokerage companies for 32 or 33 years. We started ranking top agents and teams 15 years ago. This year, we looked at 14,600 applicants to our the 1,000 with the Wall Street Journal and America's Best. And we look at all that. We look at the incredible performance of people. But we also know those that made it and don't make it through recessions. No matter how deep or shallow a recession is, there are people that just don't come out of it. So what are the things that the best brokers and agents do? And they both do the same things. The first thing is, no matter how close you have been or are to your clients and customers, get closer. It's that simple. And I'm going to be fundamental with you. Yes, social media has its place, texts, emails, they all have their place. But right now, given everything going on in your state and our country right now, with the social unrest and COVID and all of these things and the economic harm, now is a great time to think about all your family. Start there, then your friends, and then your past clients and customers and your current clients and customers, and pick up the phone and call them, all just to ask them how they're doing. That's the first call. How are you? Is your family okay? I was thinking about you. Get closer to your family, your friends. If you're a brokerage company, you should be doing this with your agents and your staff. And I mean, when I recommend you do this, I don't care that it's, almost 3 months now since we became aware that COVID was going to impact our country. It doesn't matter. You will find people among your family, friends, and clients and customers that you're actually the first person to call them to ask them how they're doing. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, but what I'm sharing with you is this is what top brokers, agents, and teams have done over the last 30 and 40 years. When they get to a recession, they may have a little extra time on their hands. It's a great time to pick up the phone and call people. I will tell you this, almost 3 months ago, I developed a list of 50 to 75 past. I did all my family, I did all my friends. I don't have a lot of family and I don't have a lot of friends, so it didn't take a long time to call them all. But I called 50 to 75, I forgot the exact number, somewhere between that, and called them. Most of them were retired from the industry. They're brokers. I sold their companies some years ago. I hadn't talked to them in a while, so I just called them. It was fun. And I will tell you this, I got more in return from them than I was able to give them by making the phone call. Many of them were literally delighted that I took the time to call and ask how they were doing. For many of them, I was the first person to call that weren't part of their own families.
Hey, Steve, can I jump in there for a second? Because I think that's just brilliant advice today. I took a training class a couple of years ago, and as part of it, during one of the breaks, we were instructed to go out and take your phone, go to your contacts list, start the time, just scroll, called dial roulette. And wherever it ended up at the end of the scroll, that's who you had to make the phone call to. And you had to do 3 of them in the 15-minute break. And it really forced you to do that because you weren't selective. You couldn't just say, well, I like this, I'm going to call them, I'm comfortable.
Right.
It forced you out of your comfort zone and to make contacts with people. And like you, one of the phone calls had nothing to do with business. No. But the person on the other end almost broke down in tears and I can't believe you called. I'm going through this right now. Personally, we had a great talk and it just was a relationship call.
Right.
So at a time like this, it's easy to pick the 3 or 4 that we know that we're going to like to talk to. Doing something like this, just go through your phone, boom, wherever that stops, make that call. It's amazing what you'll find.
Yeah, it is a time for us to reach out to anybody with whom we've had any contact. Like I said, family, friends, past clients and customers, and you're not calling to solicit business. You're calling to ask how they're doing.
Right.
I mean, now I will also add that I never brought up business. I didn't ask them for business or referrals. I did not do any of that. But within 10 days, I had 3 new referrals from those people. My intention is every quarter, I'm going to make up another list of 30 to 50 past clients, wherever they are, and just call them, because we're not through this, or we're not close to being through this. And anyway, it's a wonderful thing to do. And believe me, yes, it's tiring. Yes, it takes a lot of time. But you will get some rewards back from people who will be appreciative of the fact that you called them. That's
Well,
number
and it's a great point in that of the 3 calls I made, none of them were intended to be a business either. 2 of them turned out to be listing opportunities in the next 6 months, because it goes back to what you talked about.
Sure.
There is no algorithm that has a personal relationship like you do. And if it's all based on relationships and communication and trust, that's what develops business.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right, Chris. All right, number 2, I call it preserve capital or preserve cash. And what I recommend you do is that I don't care what your method of keeping track of stuff is, your checkbook, a spreadsheet, QuickBooks, Quicken, or something bigger. Pull out your income statement and your balance sheet and look at everything you spent money on the last 6 to 12 months and the things that you don't need to spend that aren't going to add to your practice, that aren't a direct benefit to help you stay prosperous and safe. Stop spending it. Stop spending it. Don't do it. And preserve capital, because although we have bounced, and no question, we've come off the floor, we're not going to recover. There's not a single economist thinks we recover wholly this year. It won't happen. I'll get to that in a minute. So preserve your capital. Go look at your checkbook, whatever you use, keep track of stuff, spreadsheets, and look at the stuff you spend money on and stop. I mean, and look, some of the stuff can be like goofy. Real Trends is based in Colorado. We have 8 people. We have 1 office, 2,200 square feet for all of us. We did this last summer. It's something I do every 2 years. Things just get away. And we cleaned off $35,000, $40,000 in just, what are we spending that money for? We did it again about 3 months ago when we saw this coming. And we found, for instance, that we were being charged for and paying for 2 water coolers. We obviously don't need 2, we have 1. We found that we were paying for actually 3 Zoom accounts when we only need 2. And we just found it was $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. It's not that it's huge, but it's not smart to spend money you don't have to spend. I mean, God willing, here at Real Trends, and thanks to the federal government's efforts with the payroll protection program, I haven't had to lay anybody off. I haven't had to cut pay, but we got careful about everything else we're spending. And that's the second thing that great business people do in times like these is you get really careful with what you're spending money about, and you try to hold on to cash. Because we don't know what will happen in the next 2 months. We don't know. With the economy, we think it looks like it's healing, and you know, it's not a time to be wasting money. And by the way, I mean that personally and business-wise, both. All right, so that's it. Get closer. Be careful with your money. Get closer and preserve cash. That's it. You will find, by the way, you develop those habits. Not only do you have a better chance of surviving this downturn, you will be back into habits and practices of the most successful people, whether they are agents or teams or brokerage companies. Trust me, I've had a front row seat for the early 80s recession, the late 80s recession, the early 2000s, the last one, which was 06 to 09. Shoot, the last one out of the Real Trends 500, the top 500 brokerage companies in the country, 1 in 4 didn't make it through. They did not make it. 25% of the top big brokers in the country didn't make it. Don't let that happen to you if you're a broker or an agent or a team. Okay, so there's a lot of chatter about recovery. We already have recovered in most markets in the United States faster than we could have dreamed 2 months ago. The abyss we were staring at the end of March, beginning of April was a big hole. Didn't happen. Turns out We have the normal spring surge in most markets in the country. There are exceptions. People have just flooded out to buy homes, just flooded. And we're seeing a lot of business come back to within 5, 10, 15% of where it was same time last year. Here's my view of it. It is that surge is going to run out of steam in a few months. Could be 2, could be 4. And the 2 main reasons it's going to run out of steam is we cannot overlook the fact that 30 to 35 million of our fellow American citizens are out of work right now. And a lot of them, the jobs won't be there when they come off unemployment, when their benefits expire. I mean, there have, people seem to think, well, this is all about what? Restaurant workers and retail workers. But ladies and gentlemen, it has hammered airlines, hotels, banks, manufacturing companies. I could go on and on and on. White collar, middle management people have been affected. United Airlines, American Airlines letting go 20, 30,000 managerial employees, furloughing some, letting the others go. They think it could be 5 to 8 years for the airlines to get back to where they were just 4 months ago in terms of the flights and the revenues and employees. So that's going to put a lid on how much recovery. The other thing, I don't have any data to support this, and it could be San Diego, especially the North County, is going to be different. But generally speaking, in past recessions, one thing I noticed is that top 5 or 10% of buyers and sellers, they tend to hibernate 12 to 18 months after a downturn, after a recession. Many of them are discretionary buyers and sellers. They don't have to do anything. And we already seeing, now I've talked to lead brokers in San Francisco, Chicago, Denver, and New York City. They already confirmed for me that top 5 to 10% is very quiet. It's very quiet. May not be the case in North San Diego County, but generally around the country, it's true. One last thing that's going on, it's funny, there seem to be some people saying it's not going on, and then there's other evidence that it is going on. But clearly, particularly among cities like New York, Chicago, Minneapolis, Philadelphia, Boston, Washington, even Atlanta, there are floods of people who live in those towns, in those metro areas, who are going out to the country, the suburbs or beyond, exurbs, or going even further and buying new homes away from urban core centers. I hear this from brokers in New Jersey and Connecticut and Rhode Island, Long Island. There are people coming out of New York City and buying homes out of the city. Some of them are second, but some of them are primary homes. I don't know if that's going on in San Diego County yet, or particularly in the city of San Diego, but I know it's happening in Los Angeles, and we know it's happening in San Francisco. Particularly with the impact of so many people now working from home, and we don't know how much of that is permanent. We don't have any idea. Some of it's going to be. And so a lot of people in my town of Denver, Denver is 25 miles north of me, and it's an awful commute down the interstate, just like I assume your commute is awful if you have to go from the North County downtown or go to the airport. There's a lot of people, all of a sudden, I live in Castle Pines, and there's Lone Tree and Castle Rock, nice suburbs. And just beyond us, it just opens up into farm country or ranch country. There's all kinds of people coming out here from downtown Denver to buy out here because they don't want to be in crowds anymore, and they don't want to ride elevators anymore. And their employers say you can work from home. We don't know yet what impact that's going to have. So it's going to be a very, very interesting future. And those are the basic things I wanted to share with you today. Some really good news about housing consumers' view of us. And second, 2 tactics that have proven to be successful in years past. And last, recovery is coming back. if you look at NAR and the mortgage bankers and Zillow and Realtor.com and a couple of others, economists, you average them all together, they think we'll get back to between 80 and 85% of last year's housing unit sales by the end of this year. So down 15 to 20%, it's not good. It's kind of ugly, but it could have been worse. So Chris, I'll take any questions people might have.
That's great. Thank you, Steve. We do have some questions in there. I know a lot of you have joined after the announcement, but this is being recorded. So if you go to nsdcrtv.com, you'll be able to find this once we're done. A couple comments and then questions. And again, use the chat. We don't have the hand raise or online questions, so make sure you use the chat and we'll be able to ask those to Steve. So a couple things that as you were talking. One is you're right. Consumer confidence is what makes our business go. I mean, there's only so many deaths and divorce and job transfers to fuel the industry. We need people moving because they want to move.
Right.
And they only move when they want to move if they're confident that there's going to be a job or there's going to be a economy, there's going to be something down the road. So I think that your position on this surge happening for a few months is probably realistic. And then maybe we'll see what happens toward the end of the year. But I don't think that we should all believe that what we're seeing right now is going to be the norm for the next 12 months.
No, I don't. But you know what? I will tell you the end of March, I was cautioning all my brokerage clients that they needed to prepare that we might see unit sales decrease by 30% in April, May, and June. For most of my clients, not going to turn out to be that bad. The good news is a lot of them went and got prepared for it. So they're actually doing extremely well right now, even though sales are still down 15, 18, 20% from the same month the year before. I saw somebody posted a question about, you said the person said you were using Facebook to market for new homes. Let me read the question, make sure I understand it. Pardon me, I put my glass on so I can read. Just signed up for a program for advertising on Facebook for new homes. Would you cancel that? I'm not sure I understand exactly. You're trying to prospect for new homes, or you're actually trying to sell some new homes for clients of yours. If it's the latter, I would of course spend the money on Facebook to sell new homes if they're my clients. Would I be prospecting for new homes right now? Probably not. I probably wouldn't. I hope that helps.
That leads me to my second comment, and it's something that you talked about when you talked about cash and making sure that you're protecting yourself for the future. I think it was you, and if not, I'm going to give you credit for it anyway. But
yeah.
A few years ago, I heard you speak, and you said something to the effect of, we're talking about businesses, and it said, if you were to build your business today, how would you build it? And if you're not doing it that way today, why not? And I've taken that to heart for my own real estate company, and actually for the association now, is if you were building it today, how would you do it? And if you're not doing it that way, why not? We have to look at today, regardless of what happened 20 years ago. What's the industry today? Where's the business headed today? And that's how we have to look at building our business today. If we're not doing that, we should be doing that today.
That's excellent. Now, actually, I think came out of the book and movie Moneyball. And we had the privilege of having Paul D. Podesta, who was the data guy working with Billy Beane. And he and Billy came up with the concept of the naive question, which is, if we weren't doing things the way we were, how would we be doing them? You know, he and Billy Beane looked at it and said, well, let's see, the Oakland Athletics baseball team haven't made money or had a winning season in like 7 or 8 years. Maybe we should stop doing what we're doing because it's not working. So you focus on that. By the way, that person commented back, make sure I said, telling people about the new homes that are out there to get new prospects. I'd probably still keep doing that. I would keep doing that. I hope that helps. Either way, I see what you're trying to do. I mean, if you have a good social media reach and you want to make people aware of new homes that are coming on the market, you have a thinking that they might have an interest, of course you would do that.
Okay.
Somebody said they missed I wondered when somebody asked this. I missed the second point. You said number one was negotiating, and number three is navigating, because number two is a stunner. And this is the one that I tend to avoid it because it's just one of those ones that I'm puzzled about. But number two service that agents provide customers, believe it or not, is providing them lists of homes that fit their criteria, whether they're a seller or a buyer. Now think about that. Isn't that what people go to the internet to do? Isn't that what they do? They go there and then they talk to us. But actually the second most valued service is giving them links to or shipping or providing in some fashion information on homes that are comparable to one they're trying to sell or are within the range of and the parameters of what they're looking to buy. They actually want you to help them find those things. Now, that shouldn't come as a surprise, but it has surprised me both. We did this study in 2014, and we got the same answer. It's so what I tell people kiddingly is I said, when you get a buyer, that says, I'm looking for this and this and this, well, you probably should take notes and set them up on an auto feed or personally send them stuff that matches. But what you surely shouldn't do is just say, well, go on the internet and look and see what you see, and then let's talk about what you found. That's probably not a smart thing to do. But that's number two, sharing information on comparable properties.
Okay, before you get to another question, before the call, we were talking a little bit about your agent survey, and you had a couple amazing stories that wouldn't you mind sharing with everybody about agents reporting their numbers? Because sometimes we look at that and we just think, oh my God, how's that even possible?
Yeah, well, we do it's called the 1,000 with Real Trends and Tom Ferry and promoted in the Wall Street Journal as a national sponsor. So we look at teams and agents, two different kinds of business, and we measure them by transactions and volume. This year, we expanded the team category, 3 different sizes of teams, and then we also have designed 2 new categories for agents or teams who own their own brokerage companies. They have their own categories now. So you have to sort through all this, but like just this morning, and it has to be right as we humanly can make it. But we had one this morning that they had reported a team doing $1 billion in sales. Turns out they were off. They put one too many zeros. It was 100 million. But I will tell you the number one individual in the country did over 600 million in sales last year.
That's staggering numbers.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously in a very high price community. I interviewed all the top people in each category. We put them through a pretty rigorous interview process to make sure there's no mistaking what they did, how much they did. But there are a lot of individual agents that did more than $200 million last year. A lot of teams did more than 200 million. It's just amazing. I mean, dozens and dozens of people just really have built incredible practices, really have. But yeah, I had to look at 1,400 agent websites last week and over the weekend because one of the things we do is we have pretty clear definitions of individuals and teams. And I was determined to do the best job I could to decide, are they really individuals? And we had about 120 individuals that, they call themselves a team. They have agents on their team. They talk about their agents on the team and the services they provide. And we move those people very professionally over to the team category under the idea that if it looks like a team and talks like a team and markets like a team, it must be a team.
So there's a question that came in just now that actually I was going to try and get to as well. The question is, what is the top differentiating factor for those successful firms and agents?
I won't claim to be an expert because I haven't finished doing all the interviews to ask about their stories. But we have done this research in the past. I mean, it's fascinating when you understand that there's really three things that we have found about really successful agents and teams, doesn't seem to matter, is first of all, they actually have a plan for their business of how they intend to succeed. They literally they're not just wandering around making a few random calls. They actually have a plan for how they're going to build their business. And by the way, there's not one plan that fits everybody and that works for everybody. And you develop then from that plan a set of practices and habits. And you obviously change those a little bit as you go along as to what's working and what isn't. But I interviewed two women a couple of years ago up in the Pasadena area. For 4 years, they built a practice working together, walking neighborhoods which had, I think, 400 to 500 homes. They got to know virtually everybody lived in there, and they built a $40 or $50 million sales business out of those neighborhoods just by walking neighborhoods. I have another guy interviewed up in Michigan. He was as desolate as could be in a human being's life. 45, his spouse left him with 6 kids, a house, and no money in the bank. And he had a real estate license. This is 8, 9 years ago. I interviewed him personally on a tour of that company. He decided he could not wait for sphere of influence or direct mail. He needed to get business. He had 6 kids. I thought it was one of the most extraordinary stories I'd ever heard. He door knocked expireds and FSBOs. He never worked from 4:30 to 7 o'clock at night. That was dinner and homework time for the kids. And he never worked Sundays. That was church and family day. His first year, he did 45 transactions. When I last talked to him, his second year, he'd done 78 transactions worth in the vicinity of 20 some odd million dollars in business. And he's never looked back. So they have a plan. They have the habits and practices to develop that plan. I will tell you lastly, the best agents and teams I know of, they work extremely hard. These are not people working 35 to 40 hours a week. Not the ones I've talked to. Not the ones I've talked to. They work a lot of hours. They work extremely hard at what they do. They do. And last, which is kind of interesting, we did this study with top teams and agents. It's been 2-3 years ago. One of the things that we also found out about them is, you ask them what they do in their free time. And a lot of them, they talked about normal hobbies, but almost a great majority of them said they go to seminars. They read books about business and inspiration. So they're learning. They're constantly learning, trying to improve themselves and try to improve how they work. They're constantly learning. So they have a plan. They develop the steps to execute the plan. They work extremely hard, and they're constantly learning. And Chris, those are the 4 things that come to mind of all the top agents and teams I've interviewed. That's what they do.
It's not rocket science, but it's just doing it. It's actually,
Yeah.
Most agents that I know don't have a written plan. They're like the tail on the dog, right? They go wherever the shiny penny is or the next opportunity, and they're not consistent in following that plan.
Yeah, I like to share with agents, as Chris mentioned, one of the consulting things we do is we represent brokers when they're selling their companies. And we've done almost 800 transactions in 34 years at Real Trends. So I'm a listing agent, no different than anybody on this Zoom call. We have listings. We're selling brokerage companies. And my clients are just like yours. There's good ones and there's not so good ones and there's crazy ones and there's the whole mixture of them. But, we built our practice on one kind of approach to things, which is we will first concentrate solely on doing the best job we can for our clients, and we will worry about the money secondarily. If we do a good job, the money will follow. And so we communicate that kind of message through all kinds of ways, through our Real Trends publications, through our webinars and various things. But one of the things we do is we tell people the first call is always free. And I can guarantee you, I have probably given away 6 figures income in the last 20 years or so by helping somebody when they called and I solved their issue on that first phone call and never charged them. I can also tell you how many of those people have called us back to do work for them in the future. So we have a plan. We know what we're going to communicate. We know how to execute it. And lastly, I am one who can say, I know lots of people a lot smarter than I am. And I actually know a lot of people that work harder than I do, but there aren't many that combine my general level of intelligence and my general work ethic. And you have to decide, what are you prepared to put into this, into your practice?
Great,
That's
great
it.
point.
Yep.
So let me ask you a question, because I know that this keeps coming up. It's not in our
Yep.
chat box, but people are in the industry are talking about consolidation. You know, anytime something like this happens, you know, where do you see the trend for consolidations of companies or teams to or individuals to teams? How do you see that all playing out in the future?
There will be, there always is during consolidation among brokerage companies, there is always some consolidation. And then within 3-4 years after a downturn and consolidation, we're back to having as many firms as we did before.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could write a book about my 44 years, I would say, number one, there have always been disruptors. And the industry always has to adapt. And we always have to adapt further. And the new business models, I mean, there's one that's headquartered in San Francisco called Side Inc. And they provide a suite of services for top agents and teams. And it's only, I don't know, 2 or 3 years old. We just saw a new company is out there now building called Realm Global. And it is for top agents and teams, and it's a limited number. And they have built an like just picture a total interconnected global community of high-end net worth individuals and all the data you could want to know about those people, and then served by a group of high-end producing agents and teams around the globe that have their own network and their own place to go chat and find out. I mean, it was fascinating to find out. They demonstrated, for instance, I think they looked up Rich Barton, who's the co-founder of Zillow, who's a billionaire, and they looked him up on the database of Realm Global, and it had, you know, where he owns homes and what his jobs have been and where he's done this and all this information about Rich Barton. Where does he have his second homes? Where does he go on vacation? Can you imagine? And so that's a whole new model. Realm Global and Side, and it's just constantly churning with innovation in our industry. No such thing as, or I don't know who said it a long time ago, but there is no there. You know, when we get there, we'll be fine. There's no such place.
Yeah. It's the journey, not the destination.
Right.
Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat box. If you have anything, jump in right now. We still have a couple minutes left, but anything else that you want to close with then, Steve? I mean, it's been great information. Hopefully everybody's gotten some good stuff out of it.
Let me just see. Okay, yeah, I think we did that. You know, just to tell everyone here, we're recovering. We're on the road. We probably won't get there this year. Might get closer next year. We're going to be okay. The industry is going to be just fine. Keep in mind what I shared with you about consumers' desire to want to use your services because you're good at what you do and you do provide value and comfort to people who buy and sell. It's been an honor to be with you today. I will pray for your safety and health. I really will, that no one listening in just gets in trouble with this COVID stuff. So Chris, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Remember, everybody, you're going to get an email today. Make sure you vote and stay tuned for the next chat that we will be doing as soon as we get lined up. We're trying to get Gov Hutchinson, who's the chief counsel for CAR. So, all right, guys. Again, as Steve said, see you next time. Stay healthy, stay safe. Take care.